This is an existentially dangerous biological warfare weapon that, from what I can see, still leaked out of that BSL-4 facility in Wuhan, China, that was their equivalent to our Fort Detrick. That's why they were setting it up. It was the first BSL-4. They figured, well, the Americans have the Fort Detrick, we're going to have our Wuhan. That's where this came from. And so the flu has nothing to do with this. It's far more dangerous than the flu and far more infectious than the flu. You'll note that even as of yesterday, Birx and the others, the CDC, were saying, well, you have to stay 6 feet away. That is a flu guideline.
That's right. Now they're saying it's 21 feet. In fact, it's spreading at 21 feet. You know, I'm getting all these letters and calls from people that like the Q movement. And there are people that are in the movement that are nice people that do good work and expose the globalist. But I know who created it. I know it got hijacked. I know the creators of it don't like where it went. And I guess in the future, I'll just reveal next week who those people are. I mean, that's a fact. So I'm not saying people are bad that are into that type of thing. But that's what the media always claims I am, like some foggy conspiracy theory. When 95% of what we do here is have president on, people who, members of Congress, famous professors and lawyers that wrote the U.S. biological weapons law that became the treaty, became the UN law. We have famous nutritionists on. We have medical doctors on. We have activists. We have callers. We're real. You know, I've been with the plan to relaunch America and retake our republic for the 26 years I've been on air. They ran a promo there that said 24 years. I haven't changed 27. I've been on air 26 years since 1995. No big deal. I just want to get that accurate. But, you know, here's Dr. Francis Boyle. He's a big professor up in Illinois. He's, has his PhD from Harvard, the same elite area that Henry Kissinger went through, but he was there to expose it. He has represented world leaders at The Hague, presidents of countries. But it's like, oh, who cares what he says? There was something on 4chan. And again, I'm not in competition with that. It's the fascination of the Easter egg hunt, of winning the lottery ticket or whatever. When we have all the documents, we know what's going on. We know now that the Pentagon's coming out and British intelligence and U.S. intelligence is saying, looks like China did this on purpose. They covered it up. They got it over here. The Democrats said stand down. Now they're blaming Trump, saying he did nothing. And we know the virus has 4 different delivery systems and now attacks the testicles. And that's all just brushed over. Event 201, that's real. The Rockefeller plan for worldwide tyranny, lockstep, that's real. Memorandum 200, State Department, Kissinger, that's real. The level 4 bioweapons labs all over, churning out this dangerous stuff that keeps leaking. China admits a bunch of other times they released things they were working on that caused all the problems. The SARS, the bird flu, the swine flu, now COVID-19. That's all real stuff here. That's why the globalists want us off air. So going to Dr. Francis Boyle, author, researcher as well, so much. You've got some big breaking news. So please tell us just your view of the current landscape politically. Do you think Trump's doing a good job? What do you think of the Democrats that said, let the flights come in 5-6 weeks ago? And when Trump said no, now they say it's his fault. Where do you see this going? How bad is it going to get? You projected it would be bad. I think it is worse than the flu as you first projected. We know it's a bioweapon then, or one that was being made that got out. What's the point of all this? Dr. Boyle, thank you.
Well, Alex, thank you very much, and my best to your viewing audience. And I want to thank your viewers who send me very kind emails all the time, not just because they agree with me, but they appreciate my viewpoints. Well, just to sum up, I'm sorry I didn't get to see the whole press conference yesterday because I was teaching from 3 to 6. I picked it up from there and then on the news media, and then I did see the press conference last week, the Trump Corona Task Force under Vice President Pence. And the existential problem, and I kid you not here, Alex, the existential problem here, Birx made it clear that they people like Fauci, Azar, Redfield, they are operating on the assumption that COVID is analogous to the flu. And of course, it is not analogous to the flu. This is an existentially dangerous biological warfare weapon that, from what I can see, still leaked out of that BSL-4 facility in Wuhan, China, that was their equivalent to our Fort Detrick. That's why they were setting it up. It was the first BSL-4. They figured, well, the Americans have a Fort Detrick, we're going to have our Wuhan. That's where this came from. And so the flu has nothing to do with this. It's far more dangerous than the flu and far more infectious than the flu. You'll note that even as of yesterday, Birx and the others, the CDC, were saying, well, you have to stay 6 feet away. That is a flu guideline.
That's right. Now they're saying it's 21 feet. In fact, it's spreading at 21 feet.
Right. Well, I just read that on the news media yesterday that an MIT professor said it was about 27 feet. I was not able, because I do all my teaching Monday, Tuesday, I was not able to evaluate that.
Sure, I think they said 21 to 27, yeah.
Right. But I've been saying all along, well, at least 12 feet, because it has gain of function. That is properties. That is very clear in that University of North Carolina Wuhan BSL-4 article that you and I went through almost line by line. Indeed, I could have spent another half hour explaining all the evils in that article, Alex. And I know we only had so much time, but it's clear it has gain of function. Now, based on previous studies, gain of function biowarfare agents, 7, 8 feet, 9, this could go more. It seems like it goes a lot more. Finally, as of yesterday, someone admitted it floats in the air. That's right, it travels in the air. It has nothing to do with droplets. And if you saw yesterday's press conference, Fauci, who's up to his eyeballs in biological warfare work, just dismissed this MIT professor with a little theatrical performance, snorting. I mean, it was really revolting.
Yeah, that's not a scientific. That's not a scientific argument.
No, of course not. It's just trying to discredit some professor at MIT, which I haven't read the article.
But we know this. Something's going on with the virus. What about how it now attacks the testicles? I mean, they're learning more and more, and it's like there's hundreds of mutations now.
Well, I've read at least 5 or so, right? But if you go back and read that original UNC Wuhan BSL-4 article, they have all sorts of things in there, including HIV. It's right in there. It just says, yeah, we used HIV too. And it's gain of function. It's SARS-2 that has been weaponized.
Well, let's walk through the
we don't know what else.
We've already done this on other shows, but there's new audiences tuning in all the time, Professor, because people need to understand top research facilities. We've gone over it already. Multiple ones around the world, India, Europe, have looked at it, and it's ridiculous. It's so man-made. Just like when somebody's had a chest surgery, open heart surgery, you see that. I mean, it's cut in. They've sliced in the viruses. At the microscopic level, the cuts are even more obvious. It's got the P shuttle showing where the proteins are there, where they put it in. It's ridiculous, folks. It's like going to the pool and a woman's got gigantic breasts and huge scars. You know they're fake. I mean, it is a flaming man-made virus. It is like a giant red spotlight like they have in New York to scare people. And they're not telling people that we've just moved past that, and China's now blaming the U.S. Army. So it's kosher for them to do that, but not us to question it. We'll do that with Dr. Boyle straight ahead. I am not Machiavelli in my actions. My actions are very straightforward, and I've always been that way. Classic Americana trait. And I talk about myself because we've lost that trait to a great extent. But you've got to be able to also think Machiavelli to stop those that are engaged in those type of subterfuges. And China has written the book on that. So have some of the corrupt elites in the West. But Dr. Francis Boyle, he's always been a straight shooter as well. And he's the author of the U.S. Biological Weapons Law that became the world law, most of it. He's represented world presidents, world leaders on the world stage. So he's a big dog in all this. He's got a lot of integrity. And we can't go back over the old stuff. Anybody that wants to look up that it's man-made, it's there. China began to come out and say they thought the Army did it. Well, we wargamed that 6, 7, 8 weeks ago with Dr. Boyle here on air. And he honed it down, and others did, to no, it came out of Wuhan. Yes, the precursor was sold by Obama, 2015. We've already gone over that, but the audience keeps asking me. There's new people every minute that tune in. And if you could just spend some time as an expert that has a lot of context as well, looking at the virus and where you think it's going, because it does reinfect. Yes, it's great to have zinc and vitamin D and things to bolster your defenses. That's great. But the point is that at the time it came out, at the end of the trade war that Chi-Coms had lost, and the globalists want to get rid of Trump, I know you're saying, why would they release it when it's obviously man-made? Well, he gets to crack down on Taiwan. Xi Jinping does. He gets to crack down on his own people. Then it gets into the U.S. It takes down our free society, kills our markets. Why would they want to do that? Well, we're in a war. So I don't disagree with you because we're not 100% sure, but I know that the British intelligence, U.S. intelligence, the Senate Intelligence Committee, they're starting to move towards the consensus. They think Xi Jinping or other bad actors did do this on purpose. So I know you're a professor and a guy that just gets into what you can prove, but gut level, what do you think is really going on here?
Well, Alex, again, I believe it was a leak. There have been leaks at the Chinese biological warfare labs before. And I still believe it was a leak. If someone could, give me solid evidence the Chinese shot themselves in the foot this way, I'd take a look at it. But even our own Fort Detrick, which is supposed to be the gold standard of BSL-4's leaks. I mean, it leaked, I think, originally as late as last summer. All these labs leak. That's why if you look at the documentary film Anthrax War by Nadler and Cohn, I go through all this, and at the end of it, I just say, this is a catastrophe waiting to happen, because all these biowarfare labs, BSL-3, BSL-4, extremely dangerous, they leak, and even if they're not done deliberately, at some point, there's going to be a catastrophic leak.
But as you know, with the anthrax, which you were involved in exposing, that wasn't a leak. Somebody smuggled it out of there. So we also have history of governments using these weapons.
You're exactly correct, Alex. I blew the whistle on that anthrax shortly after the New York Times published the technology. It was 1 trillion spores per gram. It floated through the air, just like COVID is doing. So that was very clear. It could have only come out of a U.S. government biological weapons laboratory. I said that to Fox News on the stairs of Harvard Divinity School just before going in there to chair a workshop on biological weapons. Then I sent it to a Washington, D.C. Radio station. Then I said it to the BBC. The whole world heard me. And then I was silenced. No one ever talked to me again about biological. By the way,
when you were on like 5, 6 weeks ago, you said it had gain of function and was in the air. You were one of the first to say that. That's on record. Now they have ABC says there's a big study out confirming that. So how did you know that?
That's very clear in the UNC Wuhan 4 North Carolina article that we already discussed. Indeed.
So that was gain of function, as you said, 5 years ago.
Right. I condemn all this gain of function work, and indeed a lot of other scientists did. And Obama paused it for a period of time. There was sort of a fake, phony looking into it while the pause was going on. And then Obama reauthorized it to go all over again. And indeed, this UNC study makes that very clear at the end, that they paused it because, Obama ordered it to be paused
So what do you make of all the Western intelligence agencies, pretty much all of them, saying the word reckoning, starting with the Senate Intelligence Committee 2 weeks ago, now British intelligence last week, saying you're to blame, you're going to be a pariah, we're going to get you. You don't usually hear 10 Downing Street talk like that. I mean, I'm not an Anglophile. I don't like a lot of stuff they do, but they don't usually shoot their mouth off unless they're really going to do something. What do you make of that?
Well, I hadn't seen that report, but Alex, you're right. In my opinion, I believe the CIA, the National Security Agency, and U.S. military intelligence knew right away that this was an offensive biological warfare agent that came out of that Wuhan BSL-4. Indeed, Tony Fauci knew it right away. All he had to do was call it up on his computer to find that UNC contract because he funded it. NIAID, his organization, funded this along with NIH and FDA.
Yeah, so one of the guys responsible in the chain, of course, is running the response so he can cover it up properly.
Well, that's the point here, Alex. I don't know what these people told President Trump or Vice President.
You warned him 7 weeks ago here that Fauci would stab him in the back. That's all he's done.
Well, that's right. It's not just Fauci. It's the Redfield there, CDC. They've been up to their eyeballs in Nazi biological warfare work, going back to the Reagan administration. This Gregoire, he's been.
And you call it Nazi because they were really the first to officially, right? The Japanese did too, have offensive biological weapons programs, and we took over their program in Operation Paperclip.
Right, and what happened is President Roosevelt had intelligence that the Nazis were, developing biological weapons. So if I remember correctly, he asked the National Academy of Science if we could do it too. They said yes. So then he ordered Merck to do it. And we did develop biological weapons, but we decided we were only going to use them if Hitler and the Nazis used them. And then after the war, we made a deal with these Japanese biowarfare scientists that if they turn they did use them against the Chinese. That if we turned everything, all their products and research and went to work for us, they wouldn't be prosecuted. But to get back to my point, I think that all these people knew very soon after this leak.
So you're saying it's not just a power grab, they are legitimately scared.
Right, and they've been trying to cover it up ever since. It could be they've been lying to President Trump and Vice President Pence. I noticed today on the wire service, Vice President Pence said the CDC didn't tell him what was going on here. I wouldn't believe anything the CDC told me.
Well, by the way, I'm not just sitting there tooting your horn. I wish we had the energy in the crew, but everybody remembers when you were on 6 weeks ago, you said, look out, they're not telling Trump, they're not telling Pence, they're going to blame them, they're covering up for themselves. And that's good news. I saw that too, that Pence is going, hey, I wasn't told this, because they see the setup now.
Right, and what they're worried about is that, my Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989 provided for life imprisonment for everyone involved in this. And they know that because after I got my statute adopted... Hold on.
Get into your law when we come back to you wrote. That's law. When we come back, we'll talk about what's coming next. Stay with us. All right, Dr. Francis Boyle, professor, author of the U.S. Biological Weapons Law that became most of it into the world law. Here it is right here for TV viewers. Public Law 101-298-May 22nd, 1990. Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act, and he's on record as the author of that, and he's, again, represents world leaders at The Hague, the whole 9 yards. So you want an insider who's been exposing the system, you've got it here, not some foggy thing on a 4chan board. This is what we bring you is the real deal here. Laying all this out, you came up against the break. You were saying people at the NIH know they've committed these crimes. They know they're facing life in prison. That's why they don't want the public to know. And the big no-no is that it's man-made. The Chinese know it's man-made. They're saying the army did it. So they got a problem, don't they?
Well, I just for your viewers, many of your viewers asked me about the U.S. Army being over there, and we've discussed this before, Alex. correlation is not causation. And so far, I have not seen a direct chain of causation there.
That's right. It's
I
a
have
city of 11 million or 12 million people. So if I'm in New York City, when somebody gets murdered, it doesn't mean I murdered somebody.
I think that's correct. And people keep sending me things to look at and comment on, but I haven't seen that yet. What I have seen is this University of North Carolina, Wuhan BSL-4 article that we've gone through. It's all right in there. There is a direct chain of causation. And, you know, as a lawyer and a law professor, we learn in our evidence courses that we have to take for the bar exam. There's a big difference between circumstantial evidence and direct evidence.
Well, Dr. Boyle, there's ridiculous evidence this comes out of China. The level 4 lab is there. It's the only one they have, they admit. Surely there's others. And then you've got all their horrible ways that they handle things, very sloppy. They have a history of leaking things. I mean, yes, at a professorly or law enforcement view, that is the prime suspect with the evidence you have. But couldn't it be a purposeful release?
Well, Alex, I haven't seen that evidence yet between you and me. And it would be, you have to understand, Alex, the people working on this COVID over in that Wuhan BSL-4 were wearing moon suits, okay? That's what they wear in BSL-4. You've seen those in the movie. That's how dangerous it is. It's existentially dangerous. And my estimate was, it's still my analysis, they were reserving it, if necessary, to launch a biological warfare attack against us, just like, you know, we have our own biological weapons. That's what I believe the purpose was there. There's no legitimate
Sure, you're right.
scientific...
Almost every time, like with the Russians, anthrax got out on their own people on the Chimkaka Peninsula. But also, you've got the famous cases where the Nazi scientists were at Plum Island, and it's pretty much settled, even mainline science, correct me if I'm wrong, that deer swam the few miles over from Plum Island to New York and Connecticut, and that's why you have Lyme's disease, which is basically tick-borne syphilis.
Right, and that's also why you have West Nile disease. I mean, how does West Nile disease get over here in the United States? It's because Plum Island was working on it, and there is a very long history of the Department of Agriculture there in charge of research, development, testing of biological warfare.
Why are these mad scientists doing this? Are they like pyromaniacs that like to burn houses down? Because, as you said years ago, look out with Bill Gates and these mosquitoes. They release them. They admit it created Zika. Now the mosquitoes are mutating and killing a bunch of people. Oh, it messed up and kills people. I mean, it's so obvious it's a eugenics operation.
Certainly that Zika was. Those were biowarfare mosquitoes, probably coming out of Fort Collins, a special U.S. government lab at Fort Collins. And it does appear Zika was targeted to reduce the number of brown people down there in Latin America, right? Those are the ones primarily
and we have State Department Memorandum 200 where Kissinger said that was the plan. To tell folks about that.
Yes, and you can read that. I think you put it up there on the screen, and you had mentioned Machiavelli. Well, as I said, I deliberately went through the exact same, yeah, there you go, terrible picture of a little baby. I deliberately went through that exact same PhD program at Harvard that produced Kissinger before me. Well, to get that PhD there in the Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, Department of Government, for my exams and final oral exam, I had to know Machiavelli backward and forward, upside down, in my sleep and by rote. That's what you have to do to get through there. Kissinger's fellow teacher there, Stanley Hoffman, he was my PhD supervisor. He started out teaching at Harvard with Kissinger, so he's known him forever. He's no longer with us. But he just said Kissinger is a quintessential Machiavelli. He doesn't have a principal bone in his body. That's exactly correct, Alex. And all the people trained, certainly at that program, that's exactly the way they get trained to think. Otherwise, you don't get a PhD from Harvard in specializing in political science.
Now, you said you infiltrated them. Did they just, because you had high scores, let you do that very rare program? Or, I mean, did they get mad later when they learned that you'd infiltrated them?
Well, Alex, when I was 17, I was so appalled by the Vietnam War that I just decided I would get the most elite education I possibly could and turn it against the people running the American
Sure, but
empire.
usually at that level, they vet somebody before they, I mean, they didn't poke around and like see if you were a sociopath before they let you do it? Because most people that get to that level, I know some of those people, they had to lie to get, to get through there to actually learn the secrets.
No, I didn't lie. I was just top of my class at the University of Chicago, graduated in 3 years, won a Sigma Xi
Sure, and again,
award.
that's the perfect Chicago Business School neocon feeder to Harvard, exactly.
Well, that's exactly correct. And I went to school with all the neocons at the University of Chicago. So
they just figured peer pressure would bring you along. They figured you were in the bunch.
I guess they did. I guess they figured eventually at the end of the day, all the brainwashing and I told all three of my sons, I said, look, with 3 degrees from Harvard, I could have had all the power, all the money, all the fame I wanted. And instead, I've just decided to make the world a better place.
Well, yeah, most people don't, but there really is a Harvard mafia. I mean, if you look at it, it's the most elite school in the world. It's all just about you're a fellow traveler with these people. It's just crazy.
Sure, Obama was behind me. Romney was my section mate. Pompeo was behind me. They all went to Harvard. That's why they go. It's the power and the money. Hey, even President Xi, since we're talking about China, his daughter goes to Harvard. She studies there under a pseudonym. So, there you are. What can I say? But to get back to our current dilemma, since the everyone surrounding Trump and Pence, Trump and Pence are experts on this. So I have no idea what they're telling Trump and Pence. They have to rely on their advisors. So fine.
But it is big, as you said earlier, that Pence has come out and said, hey, CDC didn't tell us this stuff.
He very well could be telling the truth. That's right. I would, Pence was governor of Indiana right next to me. He's not my type of guy, but I'm not impugning his integrity here. No. And that's probably what happened, that these people know they face life in prison for what they did here under my law, if it ever comes out what happened. And so they have no alternative but to cover all this up right from the get-go. And unfortunately, we, the American people, I mean, all of us are in the same boat here. We're suffering because they will not level with us so that we understand the dimensions of what we are facing. And indeed, they are giving us guidelines and operating and lying to us and saying, well, it's analogous to the flu. We can't be treating this like the flu. Indeed, even Birx said last week, she said, well, these models we're coming up with pretty much based on the flu. Well, that's ridiculous, because even this figure of 100 to 200,000 dead on whatever this model is, if it's based on the flu, is totally worthless, completely worthless. We could be talking those British computer models came up with 2.2 million. That sounds more reasonable to me than a CDC.
So what that means is, if that's accurate, that the Chinese massively covered up this.
Of course they did. And, and I regret to say there's all sorts of people who accept the PRC propaganda. And China has said this. As a matter of fact, if you're reading the accounts of the model today, I didn't get a chance. I was teaching, but I read the account. They say, well, it's based on statistics coming out of China. How can you rely on anything coming out of the Communist?
Hold on, do 5 more minutes with us. Mike Adams is coming up, and I want you 5 more minutes. Back in 2 minutes. Stay with us. All right, next segment, I'm going to play a couple important reports that hand the baton to Mike Adams of Natural News. Dr. Francis Boyle, a professor, expert on the whole globalist system, is here. He's involved highest levels of international affairs, you name it. And since he mentioned we're getting everything from China, how do they run the World Health Organization? Even the vice premier of Japan There's a short clip, had this to say last night. The full video is on Infowars.com. He says he should be renamed the Chinese Health Organization. Here it is.
Although the details are murky, the WHO's previous director general was a Chinese national, and at the time, there were complaints all around. And now, at least, the petition has gathered 300,000 signatures, or rather 500,000 signatures. People think the World Health Organization should change its name. It shouldn't be called the WHO. It should be renamed the CHO. This appeal is truly resonating with the people.
The Japan official took issue with former WHO Director General Margaret Chan, charging her with inadequate accountability. He said the current Director General was no better for giving in to China's spin about the coronavirus.
Early on, if the WHO had not insisted to the world that China had no pneumonia epidemic, then everybody would have taken precautions. The WHO, which is a global organization, does not even include Taiwan. And then precisely because Taiwan is not a member of the WHO, it becomes a world leader in fighting the epidemic. Then, after that statement is made, the CCP jumps out to correct it. It says Taiwan is a region, not a country.
Aso had once said that Taiwan, in various ways, is a country that shares common values with Japan. He's regarded as a member of the pro-Taiwan camp in Japanese politics. Amid the pandemic, he's turned to China with a critical eye, questioning its claim that the virus was contained and insisting on using the term Wuhan virus.
Okay, so the 3 minutes we have left, we'll appreciate your time. Why is China the person that's the boss, the organization that tells us what to do?
Well, the WHO has been, it's an Orwellian organization that they're out there to promote world health. They aren't. This even goes back to the beginning of the AIDS crisis, where the London Sunday Times years ago put out a report just saying AIDS began because the WHO decided to test out an experimental retrovirus on Black people in Africa. So, the WHO is in the pocket and cahoots with the drug industry and with the biological warfare industry. Indeed, this Wuhan BSL-4, their Fort Detrick, is a specially designated WHO research center. It would be exactly like the WHO saying, oh, we're going to designate Fort Detrick as our research center. That's exactly what they did there with that Wuhan BSL-4. You can't believe anything coming out of the WHO. And the CDC is working in cahoots with the WHO. But to get back to this point about them knowing they are in trouble here, you've heard of synthetic biology. That was bought and paid for and set up by the Pentagon's DARPA. The whole thing. It was all paid for and seeded by them. Okay, and there's a lot of money into synthetic biology. So they had a conference, the first conference ever of the synthetic biologists, and they produced a report. So I sat down there and I read through it, and what was one of their first recommendations was to repudiate my Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989. Why? Because my WADA specifically covered synthetic biology. That's why. And they knew that if my statute remained on the books, it would be used against them for life imprisonment. So again, these people know exactly what they are doing. They are not stupid people. And they're lying and they are covering up.
They're running bioweapons programs under the name of defense, transferring around the world for plausible deniability, because in the end they get giant power grabs and billions of dollars. Thank you, Dr. Boyle. Thank you so much. Now it's easier than ever to have Band.video on your iPhone. Simply go to Band.video with your Safari browser. Then you click the share button at the bottom of the screen. When the menu comes up, you simply click Add to Home Screen. It will then ask you to name the app. I suggest Band.video. You will now have Band.video app on your home screen, despite the fact that Tim Cook tried to stop it. The globalists think you're lazy, but by taking a little bit of action, you can override them, have the app, and then tell others about it so they can get the app. So it's up to you whether you want to defy big tech and click the share buttons below on your email, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, however you want. Be sure and share Band.video. A lot of listeners and viewers are confused by what I've been saying. So that's my fault. They say, Alex, you said this virus is really deadly, man-made, and it's a serious issue 8 weeks ago. Now you're saying it's overhyped and is a psychological warfare weapon and that everything's okay. Which is it? That's not what I'm saying. This is a complex, fast-moving issue, and it's my fault that I get caught in the weeds and go into little minutia. Let me just be very simple and boil it down as succinctly as possible. From our best research, this is man-made, and it was released to distract from the fact that Xi Jinping and the Chi-Coms were getting kicked out of Taiwan and had their own big protests on the mainland. Then it came to Europe and the United States, and it does kill a lot of sick and old people, and that's a big problem. And we know that it mutates, and we know that it reinfects. We know there's a lot of issues to be concerned about. But as we discovered more, we found out the Chi-Coms had exaggerated the number of deaths to create fear and work with Western media that was pro-Xi Jinping and pro-Chi-Com, but anti-Trump, anti-America, and that indeed it was an economic warfare weapon. That was its main thrust. Doesn't mean the weapon doesn't kill people. But if you're gonna release a bioweapon, a lot of times you wanna release one that's weak so that you know what it's gonna do and doesn't blow back on you too hard. It's more of a simulant to scare people. So we now know what's going on. But when it comes to Democrats locking down states and cities and having their own corporate governmental strike against America to shut down the economy, and with them now saying they're gonna hold the states hostage, even when Trump tries to turn the economy back on, and even when Trump sends the stock market back up, you know this is a bureaucratic, corporate, governmental civil war, and it's the next chapter in them trying to remove our populist president. And it tells me that with the fake Russiagate and the fake Ukraine gate, and now this, if they fail taking him out with this, they're only gonna escalate even more. And so my prognosis into the future is very bad. If Trump and the Pentagon and the Justice Department don't get reformed and start taking out these globalists who are working for the Chi-Coms and foreign powers. They're not American citizens. They're trying to create a collapse. They're bragging they want a depression. And the dereliction of duty by President Trump, I'm just gonna say it, I love Trump, he's done a great job, he's been under total attack, but he can't get control of the Justice Department, and so we've all done a terrible job there, and it is what it is. It's gonna get a lot worse. You can see the escalation, how they just keep doubling down exponentially each time. And so a lot of people are feeling really good. Oh yeah, the virus probably isn't that bad, Alex, thanks. You know, we believe you. That's not even the issue. The issue is they're talking about canceling the election. The issue is the left's trying to foment riots. The issue is the martial law and the cashless society being announced and all of this insane crap and known treatments that doctors try to give patients being blocked by Democrat governors. It's insane to confirm how crazy and criminal these people are and how they do work for the globalists and are out to get the country. We've always known that. But now it's incredibly obvious. So in future reports, I'm gonna lay out why I'm so concerned, but namely, governments and others are hoarding food because I've talked to the supply chain experts, it's running out. And when people all stay home, that's what happens, and it could trigger a permanent depression. And so the next toilet paper is food, and this you gotta have to live. We're covering it all live at band.video, Infowars.com/show.